Imagine waking up one day to find that the person you thought you were, the disciplined one, the one who could push through fatigue, silence, distractions, and stay committed to the things that mattered, has been quietly replaced by someone else, someone softer, weaker. You can't quite pinpoint when it happened. There was no dramatic moment of surrender, no single catastrophic failure. It was subtle, insidious. You just woke up one morning and realized your willpower, the invisible force that once carried you through difficulties, has eroded. And what's worse, you didn't even notice it happening. Now here's the real paradox. You haven't exactly been doing nothing. In fact, you've been busy more than ever. Your days are filled with tasks, notifications, small wins, and endless decisions. But if you're honest, how much of what you do feels like your choice? How much of your daily action feels driven by deep purpose rather than unconscious reaction? This is the cruel contradiction of modern life. You live under the illusion of autonomy while invisible hands quietly shape your behavior, moment by moment. They don't take your willpower in one grand theft. They siphon it drop by drop until you don't even fight back. And then, one day you realize that you've been tamed not by force, by the subtle erosion of your inner resolve. You probably think of willpower as a conscious, heroic effort, a tightening of muscles, a gritting of teeth, a declaration of no in the face of temptation. But what if that's not the whole story? What if willpower is less about moments of raw defiance and more about the quiet architecture of your inner life, the rituals, the boundaries, the invisible lines you draw for yourself before the battle even begins? And if that's true, what happens when that architecture is slowly dismantled, when your environment, your habits, and even your very mind are subtly rewired to make resistance feel impossible? This isn't simply about self-control in the face of chocolate cake or late-night scrolling. It's about something deeper, something existential. It's about your ability to live as an agent of your own life, rather than a passive consumer of it. It's about whether you truly act, whether you merely react. So let's ask the uncomfortable questions. When did you stop choosing and start drifting? When did your attention, once sharp and deliberate, become scattered and leased out? To algorithms, to entertainment, to everything except what truly matters. When did fatigue become your default state, so deep that it's not just in your body, but in your spirit? Perhaps the most unsettling question of all. If this quiet destruction of willpower continues, where will it leave you? Will you be 5 years from now, not in terms of your job or your possessions, but in terms of your character, your resilience, your ability to say no to what diminishes you? Some part of you knows the answer already. It's why you feel that quiet unease every time you scroll mindlessly, every time you procrastinate on the things that matter most. Every time you shrink from the challenge you know you're capable of meeting. But don't misunderstand, this isn't your fault, at least not entirely. The loss of willpower isn't simply a personal failure. It's a trap meticulously constructed around you. A trap built by forces that profit from your fatigue, your distraction, your surrender. And yet, if willpower can be dismantled so quietly, can it also be rebuilt deliberately, powerfully, and permanently? To answer that, we must first look at where your willpower has gone. We need to step into the shadows where it was stolen, to name the hidden forces that drained it from you while you were too distracted to fight back. This is where our journey begins. It's not with self-help platitudes or empty motivational speeches, but with the deeper truth about why your willpower feels like it's slipping away. And the truth is far more unsettling than you think. Because what if the very structures of your life, the routines, the devices, even the culture you live in, weren't built to strengthen you, but to dismantle you? If that's true, then the question isn't simply, how do I get my willpower back? It's bigger, it's heavier. How do you take back control of yourself in a world that quietly profits from your surrender? That's where we're headed. But to do that, you must first understand how deep this problem truly runs into why it began in the first place. The destruction of willpower doesn't begin with a catastrophic event. It begins with a whisper. It begins with convenience dressed as progress, with comfort disguised as freedom. You live in a world where almost everything is engineered to make life easier, faster, more frictionless. But here's the philosophical paradox. When all the frictions of life are removed, so too is the very resistance that forges strength. Carl Jung once wrote, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." What does that mean for you? It means that real growth demands confrontation with difficulty, demands wrestling with the shadow, confronting the chaos within. But when everything in your environment is designed to spare you from discomfort, when entertainment is instant, when food is prepackaged, when dopamine is one tap away, how often do you truly descend into that necessary struggle? You see, your willpower isn't being stolen in a single, obvious heist. It's being numbed out of existence. Every notification, every streaming service, every algorithm is a carefully crafted sedative for your mind. This is not a conspiracy theory, it's business. Companies profit when you stay on their platforms, when you buy their products, when you surrender your time and attention to them. And they've gotten very good at making that surrender feel like your choice, but it's not just technology. It's deeper than that. Schopenhauer once said that man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. This is the philosophical core of your struggle. You believe you are choosing freely, but your very desires will have been conditioned by forces you barely recognize. When you reach for your phone compulsively, when you delay the important, work to chase quick dopamine hits, you think you are acting out of choice. But are you? Or are you simply following a path carved into your mind by repetition, culture, and conditioning? Neuroscience sheds light on this. Habits are not just behaviors, they are neural grooves etched into the brain. Each time you indulge an impulse, you strengthen the wiring for that impulse. Over time, this becomes automatic. Your conscious will, the part of you that wants to do better. To change is overpowered by these deep unconscious circuits that have been rewarded repeatedly. The modern environment, with its endless distractions and instant gratification, exploits these circuits, hacks the very architecture of your brain. It's turning you into a creature of reaction rather than intention. But here's where it becomes even more insidious. Society doesn't only hack your impulses, it reframes your values. Aldous Huxley foresaw this in Brave New World. The greatest form of oppression isn't pain, but pleasure. It's not the tyrant who takes away your freedom that destroys you. It's the invisible system that drowns you in trivial pleasures until you forget freedom even matters. And so, your willpower withers not because you are lazy, but because you are overstimulated. Your brain, wired for survival in a harsh and unpredictable world, is now drowning in a flood of easy rewards. You were designed to chase scarce resources, to work hard for them, to rest only when necessary. But now, the chase is gone. Food is cheap. Entertainment is endless. Validation is instant. You don't fight for anything anymore, so you don't grow. Nietzsche warned of this when he spoke of the last man, a being who seeks nothing but comfort and security, avoiding all struggle, and thereby losing the very spark that makes him human. Have you become that? Look around. How often do you choose the difficult path? How often do you put yourself deliberately in situations that demand endurance, resilience, and real focus? Or have you, like so many, chosen the soft, life comfortable, but hollow? Now, here lies the hidden problem. Willpower is like a muscle, and muscles grow through stress. But your life has been engineered to remove that stress, to make everything easier, more pleasurable, more addictive. You are comfortable, but in that comfort, you are losing the very part of yourself that can push back against life's chaos. This is why your willpower feels so fragile. It's not that you're weak. It's that you are living in an environment designed to make strength unnecessary and therefore impossible to sustain. You are in a psychological greenhouse, safe, climate-controlled, protected from the storms of reality. But nothing grows deep roots in a greenhouse, and so you are caught in a vicious cycle. The more you give in to convenience, the less resilient you become. The less resilient you become, the more you avoid challenges. And the more you avoid challenges, the more your willpower dies, not with a scream, but with a sigh. But here's the unsettling truth. The destruction of willpower isn't just personal, it's cultural. Your very society benefits when you stay distracted, pacified, and easily influenced. When was the last time you heard a company tell you to do something difficult for your long-term growth? No, they sell you shortcut pills for your discomfort, apps for your boredom, services for your inconvenience, and in the process, they keep you docile. Do you see now? This is why you feel that quiet unease, that gnawing sense that you're not living up to your potential. It's because you aren't. Not entirely by choice, but by design. But here's the good news. If willpower can be eroded by design, it can also be rebuilt by design. You can re-engineer your life. But first, you must understand the full cost of what you've lost, which brings us to the next question. What happens when you live like this for years? When your willpower is quietly destroyed, what does it do to your identity, your relationships, your very sense of purpose? The answer is darker and more urgent than you think. The quiet destruction of willpower doesn't just make you less. Disciplined, it rewrites your very existence. It creeps into your days like an invisible parasite, reshaping your relationships, your work, your inner world, and the tragedy. You don't even recognize how deep the damage runs until the consequences are staring you in the face. Let's start small, at least it seems small at first. You stop doing the hard things, the things that once gave your life meaning. You skip the workout because you're tired. You delay the passion project because you don't feel ready. You choose the easy conversation over the difficult, but necessary one. At first it feels harmless, rational even. But over time this becomes your pattern. And what was once a minor compromise grows into a lifestyle. This is the first unseen. The consequence, the slow death of your agency. You believe you are making choices, but you are actually avoiding them. Every time you default to comfort over discomfort, you reinforce the neural pathways of avoidance. You train yourself to flinch at life instead of meeting it head-on. And eventually, you find that the mere thought of doing something difficult, truly difficult, fills you with anxiety. The once sharp edge of your will dulls to a blunt, hesitant instrument, but it doesn't stop there. When your willpower weakens, your identity fractures. Think about it. Who are you really, if not the sum of the choices you make when things are hard? Strength is born in the moments when you could give up, but you don't. Integrity comes from saying no when saying no. Yes would be easier. Growth comes from enduring discomfort. Remove these tests, and what remains of you? Viktor Frankl, who endured the unimaginable horrors of a Nazi concentration camp, wrote that man is not destroyed by suffering. He is destroyed by suffering. Without meaning. But in our world today, destruction comes not from great suffering, but from its opposite, a lack of meaningful struggle. You are not crushed by pain, but hollowed out by pleasure. Your days are filled with small, shallow distractions that numb you from confronting life's deeper questions. You're not destroyed by what happens to you, but by what you refuse to face. This leads us to the second consequence, the collapse of purpose. When you live in a constant state of distraction, you no longer know what truly matters to you. Your values are eroded not by some dramatic betrayal, but by 1,000 tiny compromises. You once dreamed of being someone who built something great, who lived with courage and intentionality. Now, your dreams are buried under hours of mindless scrolling, under the relentless noise of modern life, and this collapse doesn't just stay inside you, it seeps outward, into your relationships. When your willpower falters, you stop showing up fully for the people who need you. You avoid difficult conversations with your partner because you fear conflict. You neglect your children not out of malice, but because your attention has been hijacked by a glowing screen. You disconnect from your friends not because you don't care, but because staying meaningfully connected requires effort you no longer seem able to muster. Soon, find yourself adrift not just personally, but socially. You lose the capacity for deep connection. And without deep connection, life becomes unbearably shallow. But perhaps the most devastating consequence of all is this. You stop trusting yourself. Every time you make a promise to yourself and fail to keep it, I'll wake up early tomorrow. I'll stop procrastinating. I'll finally start working on that idea. You chip away at your self-respect. Over time, you internalize a painful belief. I can't count on me. This is where despair takes root. Because if you can't rely on yourself, who can you rely on? And if you can't control your own actions, what control do you have over anything? And yet, you don't quit, not entirely. Instead, you numb. You convince yourself that you're too busy, too tired, or just not ready yet. You tell yourself stories about why you're stuck, stories that feel comforting in the moment but are chains in disguise. But make no mistake, the cost of inaction is profound. The longer you live like this, overstimulated, underchallenged, cut off from purpose, the harder it becomes to climb out. You are caught in a psychological feedback loop. The weaker your willpower, the less capable you are of taking actions. That would strengthen it. The more you avoid meaningful struggle, the more terrifying it becomes. And it's not just you. This isn't an individual problem, it's a cultural epidemic. Entire generations are being shaped by the same forces. Dopamine-driven technology, instant gratification, shallow validation. You don't live in a society that celebrates resilience. You live in one that profits from your weakness. Think about that. Who benefits when you give in to every impulse? When you trade your time for empty entertainment? When you outsource your decisions to algorithms? It's not you. You may think you're free because no one is forcing you to do these things. But is it truly freedom if your choices are being shaped by forces you don't even see? Jean-Paul Sartre wrote that freedom is what you do with what's been done to you. But if you don't even realize what's being done to you, you can't see the invisible strings guiding your hands, can you really call yourself free? This is the existential weight of willpower's destruction. It doesn't just weaken your habits, it steals your freedom. It turns you from a conscious creator of your life into a passive consumer of it. And if that's where you are now, drift. Distracted, unfulfilled, how much worse will it be 5, 10, 20 years from now? How many dreams will die with you? How much of your life will be lost to this quiet, invisible surrender? This is the cost of doing nothing. This is the cost of not fighting back. But here's the thing. If this destruction was designed, if your weakness was engineered, then it can also be dismantled. You can fight back, but not in the way. You think it's not about forcing yourself into more willpower through sheer grit. It's about a rebellion, internal and external, structuring of your life. It's about burning down the invisible cage you've been living in. And that's where we go next. If the quiet destruction of willpower has turned you into a passive participant in your own life, then what you need is not a gentle correction, it's a rebellion. And make no mistake, this is war, not against some visible enemy, but against the invisible architecture of your existence, against the systems that have trained you to crave. Comfort over growth, distraction over purpose, surrender over effort. You cannot simply motivate yourself out of this. Motivation is a spark, rebellion is a fire. To start that fire, you must be willing to question everything about how you live, the habits, routines, the boundaries you've allowed to blur. The first act of rebellion is to reclaim friction. Modern life has tricked you into believing that the easier something is, the better. But willpower doesn't grow in ease, it grows in resistance. Muscles don't strengthen without weight. Minds don't sharpen without effort. So, you need to reintroduce difficulty not as punishment, but as training. This means creating intentional barriers between you and the habits that weaken you. If your phone hijacks your focus, don't just try to use it less. Lock it away during deep work. If junk food destroys your health goals, don't just eat in moderation. Remove it entirely from your home. If endless scrolling consumes your evenings, don't just set limits. Place it with structured activities, reading, writing, physical challenges that demand your full presence. In short, make the destructive path harder and the meaningful path easier. This isn't about self-control, it's about designing your environment so that willpower isn't constantly at war with temptation. The second act of rebellion is to confront your shadow, Carl. Jung wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Your weakened willpower isn't just about bad habits, it's about unexamined fears, unprocessed pain, and internal conflicts that keep you seeking easy escapes instead of meaningful action. You need to ask yourself, what am I avoiding? Because make no mistake, your distractions are a mask. Behind every compulsive behavior, every mindless scroll, Every delay of meaningful work lies something deeper. Fear of failure, fear of inadequacy, fear of confronting who you really are. When the noise stops, this is where real change begins, not with productivity hacks, but with brutal honesty. Journaling, therapy, deep self-reflection, these are tools of rebellion. They drag the shadow into the light, stripping away the illusions that keep you numb and compliant. The third act of rebellion is to embrace voluntary suffering. This is perhaps the most radical shift, seeking out discomfort, not running from it. Nietzsche famously wrote, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." He wasn't glorifying pain for its own sake. He was pointing to a profound truth. Growth demands suffering. Think of the moments in your life when you felt most alive, most transformed. They weren't the easy moments. They were the trials, the times you were tested, when you stepped into fear instead of avoiding it. This is why athletes willingly push their bodies to the limit, why monks choose lives of austerity, why entrepreneurs endure sleepless nights to build something out of nothing. To rebuild your willpower, you must deliberately step into challenges. This might mean cold showers to teach your body that you control it, not the other way around. This might mean waking up earlier than you want to, fasting when you don't need to, taking on physical training that scares you, or tackling creative projects that expose you to failure. When you do this, you are rewiring your brain. You are proving to yourself over and over that you can choose pain over comfort and survive. That is the foundation of willpower. The fourth act of rebellion is to clarify your why. Willpower cannot exist in a vacuum. If you're only resisting temptation for the sake of resisting, you will fail. You need a deeper reason, one that burns so fiercely it drowns out the noise of distraction. Viktor Frankl discovered this truth in the darkest of places. Surrounded by unimaginable suffering, survived because he had a why, the unshakable belief that his life had meaning, that he had work to do in the world beyond those camp walls. He who has a why to live, he wrote, can bear almost anyhow. So ask yourself, why are you doing this? Why do you want to reclaim your willpower? Is it to live longer? To be present for your children? To finally create the art, the business, the life you've been dreaming of? Without this clarity, you will break the first time the resistance feels too great. With it, you become unbreakable. The fifth and final act of rebellion is to rebuild trust with yourself. This is where most people fail. They try to take on everything at once. They set massive goals, inevitably fail, and then confirm the belief that they are weak. But trust is built the same way it's rebuilt in relationships, through small, consistent, kept promises. Start here. Choose one thing. Just one. Wake up. At the same time every day, meditate for 5 minutes. Write 200 words. Lift weights twice a week. Whatever it is, make it small enough that you can't fail, then do it. Every single day, as you keep these promises, something powerful happens. You begin to see yourself differently. You stop being the person who talks about change and start being the person who does it. And that shift in identity, that is where willpower begins to rebuild itself. Rebellion, then, is not one grand act. It's 1,000 small, defiant choices. It's deliberately choosing friction in a frictionless world. It's facing the shadow instead of running from it. It's suffering on purpose so that you grow. It's finding your why and using it as a shield against every distraction. It's keeping the smallest promises until they add up to a life you can be proud of. You cannot buy willpower. You cannot wish for it. You must forge it, one uncomfortable choice at a time. And if you truly live this rebellion, what you discover will shock you. Because the end goal isn't just more discipline. It isn't even more success. It's something far greater. The return of your freedom. And that brings us to the final and most powerful realization. Here is the truth that stings, yet liberates. Willpower was never just about discipline. It was never simply the ability to say no to temptation or yes to hard work. It was about something far deeper, your relationship with yourself, with freedom, with life itself. When you began this journey, you may have thought you needed more self-control to achieve certain goals, lose weight, build a business, write a book, fix your relationships. But now you see, those were surface-level aims. The quiet destruction of your willpower wasn't just stopping you from reaching those goals. It was reshaping who you are. This is the ultimate realization. Willpower is not a skill you use. It's the living proof that you are truly free. Think about it. What is freedom if not the ability to act according to your deepest values instead of your shallowest impulses? What is strength if not the ability to hold the line against everything internal and external that tries to drag you away from the life you want? When you lose your willpower, you don't just lose control over habits, you lose control over your destiny. You are no longer the author of your life, but a character written by algorithms, advertisers, and your own unchecked impulses. This is why reclaiming your willpower isn't just a self-improvement project. It's an existential act. It's a declaration: I will no longer be owned by my distractions, by my comfort, by the invisible systems profiting off my weakness. I will be mine again. And here's the paradox. You must embrace to fully understand this. Freedom is not the absence of constraint. It is the conscious choice of which constraints you accept. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this when he wrote about amor fati, the love of one's fate. He didn't mean resigning to whatever life throws at you. He meant deliberately choosing the burdens worth carrying, embracing the struggle that gives your life shape. In a world that promises endless ease, endless choice, and endless entertainment, you must rebel by choosing meaningful constraints. You must willingly walk the harder road, not because it's glamorous, because it makes you who you truly are. Think of the moments you've respected yourself most. Were they the moments when everything was easy? Or were they the moments when you stood your ground against fear, exhaustion, and temptation and emerged stronger for it? This is what you've been missing. This is why you've felt that quiet unease, that dull ache of dissatisfaction even in the midst of pleasure. You weren't meant to live soft and numb. You were meant to live awake, fully present, fully engaged, fully alive. Willpower, then, isn't about endless suffering. It's about reclaiming the throne of your own mind. It's about deciding what matters most to you and building a life so aligned with that vision that every act of discipline becomes an act of devotion. And here is where the ultimate shift happens. You do not get willpower. You become it. When you stop treating willpower as something you have to summon like magic hand start, living in a way that naturally builds and preserves it, to stop being at war with yourself. Your environment, your habits, your purpose, they all align. You no longer feel like you are constantly resisting. You simply live as the kind of person who does what they say they will do. This is identity transformation. Identity is stronger than any motivational hack, any productivity trick, any fleeting burst of inspiration. Viktor Frankl said that those who survived the camps were the ones who could find meaning in their suffering. He wasn't glorifying pain. He was pointing to the deeper truth that humans can endure almost anything when they know why they're enduring it. Your why, the vision of who you want to be, of the life you want to live, must become your compass. And once it does, you will notice something extraordinary. The temptations that once had power over you begin to lose their grip, because now you are not just resisting bad habits. You are protecting something sacred. That is the power of true willpower, not the grim, teeth-gritted fight to survive the next temptation, but the quiet, unwavering commitment to living a life that is wholly yours. Now you see why the destruction of willpower is so devastating. It robs you of this sacred alignment. But you also see why rebuilding it changes everything. It is not just about getting fit or working harder or focusing more. It is about waking up finally, waking up remembering that your life is finite and that you are capable of so much more than existing on autopilot. So what now? You rebel. In the smallest ways, first by keeping one promise to yourself today, and then in larger ways by redesigning your environment, by confronting your shadow, by embracing meaningful suffering, by building an identity forged in purpose. And when you stumble and you don't retreat into shame. You rise. Again, you keep rising, because the work of reclaiming your willpower is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong practice, an act of continuous becoming, and maybe, just maybe, as you walk this path, you will discover something you've been seeking all along, that the freedom you longed for was never out there. In more choices, more comfort, more escape, it was always within you in the quiet, unshakable strength of a will that is truly your own, and that more than success, more than comfort, more than anything's worth fighting for.